They ruled with iron fists, their crowns dripping not just with jewels, but with blood. From queens who crushed rebellions without mercy, to rulers who silenced enemies forever. These were not fairy tale monarchs. These were history's most ruthless rulers. And their chilling stories will leave you breathless. History remembers monarchs not only for their golden palaces and jeweled crowns, but for the shadows they cast. Behind silk curtains and marble halls, the throne was never a place of comfort. It was a battlefield disguised in velvet. Rivals whispered, enemies sharpened their blades, and even family members plotted treachery. To rule meant survival. Compassion could spark rebellion, and hesitation could invite betrayal. So many chose fear as their strongest weapon, painting their legacies with blood. Among these rulers, some queens rose beyond the role of consorts or caretakers. They became architects of power, manipulating armies, courts, and even faith itself. To keep their crowns, they silenced opposition, crushed rivals, and reshaped nations through violence. Their stories are not tales of gentle reigns, but of ruthless command. And now we reveal 10 of history's most brutal rulers. Number 1. Wu Zetian. In the heart of China's Tang dynasty, a concubine named Wu Zetian began her climb toward absolute power. Born without royal blood, she entered the palace as a servant to the emperor's desires. But where others faded into silence, Wu's ambition burned like fire. One by one, she outmaneuvered rivals, winning influence over the emperor himself. When the time came, she did the unthinkable, declaring herself emperor, the first and only woman in Chinese history to claim the dragon throne. But her rise was paved with shadows. Rivals disappeared mysteriously. Even her own children rumored to be victims of her ruthless grip. Yet Wu's reign was not only terror. She strengthened the empire, expanded education, and brought prosperity. To some, she was a visionary. To others, a monster in silk robes. Wu Zetian proved that a woman could rule China, but only by cloaking brilliance in brutality. Number 2. Ranavalona I. On the island of Madagascar, the people still whisper her name with fear. Ranavalona I, the queen who reigned for more than 30 years, ruled like a storm no one could escape. She inherited a fragile kingdom, but instead of kindness, she chose control. Her laws were harsh, her punishments cruel. Forced labor built her palaces and roads, while those who resisted faced torture or death. Most infamous was her trial by ordeal, suspects forced to swallow poison to prove innocence. Few ever survived. Her isolationist policies cut Madagascar off from the world, but at a deadly cost. Tens of thousands perished. Yet despite the blood that stained her reign, she clung to power until the end, unshaken and unrepentant. To her people, she was both protector and executioner. To history, Ranavalona remains the Mad Queen, a ruler who traded mercy for absolute fear. Number 3. Mary I of England. Bloody Mary. In England's shadowed past, one queen's name became forever tied to terror. Mary Tudor, remembered as Bloody Mary. Driven by a burning faith, she vowed to restore Catholicism to her realm. But her mission came at a cost measured in flames. Hundreds of Protestants were dragged to the stake, condemned for refusing to renounce their beliefs. The fires lit the night sky, their smoke a haunting symbol of her reign. For 5 years, England trembled. The Queen's devotion to her faith consumed her compassion until her rule became a reign of fear. Even centuries later, her name carries the weight of death. A queen remembered not for love or glory, but for the screams of those who burned in her flames. Number 4. Catherine de' Medici. In France, whispers spoke of a queen whose beauty was rivaled only by her shadow. Catherine de' Medici, the Italian-born queen, became known as the Black Widow of Europe. When her husband, King Henry II, died, Catherine stepped into power as regent. Her court became a theater of intrigue, where poison, betrayal, and secret plots were rumored to bloom. Her most infamous legacy unfolded during the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, when thousands of Protestants were slaughtered in Paris. Some say she orchestrated it, others claim she merely let the blood flow unchecked. Her reign was one of strategy and suspicion. Behind her jeweled gowns lay a woman determined to protect her dynasty at any cost. Catherine's story is not one of gentle motherhood, but of a queen willing to cloak her crown in terror. Number 5. Isabella I of Castile. To many, Queen Isabella of Castile is remembered as the visionary who funded Christopher Columbus, uniting Spain and launching a golden age. But behind her legacy lies a ruthless chapter written in blood and fire. With her husband, Ferdinand, Isabella enforced the Spanish Inquisition, a crusade of faith that demanded absolute devotion. Jews and Muslims were forced to convert or be expelled. Those accused of heresy faced trials, torture, and execution. Communities that had thrived for centuries were torn apart, families scattered to the winds. Her vision of a united Christian Spain came at a price of unimaginable suffering. To her supporters, Isabella was a saintly queen, guided by God. But to those who perished in the flames of the Inquisition, she was a ruler who chose piety over mercy and faith over humanity.
Number 6. Empress Dowager Cixi. From behind the silk screens of the Forbidden City, Empress Dowager Cixi ruled an empire in shadows. She began as a concubine, yet rose to become the power behind the Qing throne. Her influence stretched across decades, and those who dared oppose her reforms met with exile, imprisonment, or death. Reformers who sought to modernize China found themselves silenced, their ambitions crushed beneath her will. While famine and poverty spread, she spent lavishly on her own luxuries, cloaking herself in decadence as her people starved. Yet she held the empire together, a figure both feared and admired. To some, she was a shrewd survivor in a world of treachery. To others, she was the very reason China weakened. Her reign was long, but her shadow was longer. Number 7. Boudica. Not all queens ruled from golden thrones. Some ruled from the battlefield. Boudica, the warrior queen of the Iceni, became legend through blood and fire. When Roman soldiers humiliated her, flogging her and assaulting her daughters, Boudica vowed vengeance. She rallied her people, raising an army that burned Roman settlements to ash. Cities like Colchester and London fell to her fury, their streets running red. Tens of thousands were slaughtered in her rebellion, the empire itself shaken by her wrath. Though the Romans crushed her revolt, Boudica's name lived on. To her people, she was a fierce heroine who dared defy an empire. To her enemies, she was a ruthless destroyer, leaving cities in smoldering ruin. Her story blurs the line between justice and vengeance, a queen remembered as both savior and scourge. Number 8. Olga of Kiev. In the forests of Kievan Rus, Queen Olga of Kiev carved her name into history through vengeance. When her husband was murdered by a rival tribe, Olga swore blood for blood. She lured the murderers' envoys into her city and had them buried alive. She later invited more men to feasts, only to lock the halls and set them ablaze. Her most infamous revenge came when she ordered birds carrying flaming materials to be released into her enemies' towns, setting entire cities aflame. Her wrath was cunning, her punishment merciless. And yet, centuries later, the Orthodox Church canonized her as a saint, her brutality overshadowed by her later conversion to Christianity. Olga's story reminds us how thin the line can be between saint and executioner. Number 9. Elizabeth I. England's golden age was ruled by a queen whose iron will rivaled any king. Elizabeth I. Known as the Virgin Queen, she commanded loyalty and crushed defiance. When rebellions rose, they were silenced swiftly, their leaders executed. Even her own cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, was not spared. Elizabeth signed her death warrant, ending her rival's claim with cold precision. Yet Elizabeth's reign also brought stability and power, turning England into a global force. Her brilliance as a strategist secured her place in history. But behind the glory lay a queen who understood that mercy could be fatal. To survive, she ruled with a hand both graceful and ruthless. leaving behind a legacy of triumph built on the bones of her enemies. Number 10. Cleopatra VII. In the sands of Egypt, Cleopatra VII became a queen remembered for beauty, but feared for her ambition. Her throne was not inherited peacefully, it was seized. Brothers and sisters who stood in her way were eliminated, their lives claimed in her quest for power. Her alliances with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony were not just romances, but strategies, weapons wielded in silk and whispers. Her reign was one of brilliance and brutality, politics and betrayal. To some, Cleopatra was a goddess in human form, Egypt's last great queen. To others, she was a ruthless manipulator who would sacrifice anything and anyone to hold her throne. Grand finale. 10 queens, 10 thrones, 10 legacies. Each one etched not with kindness, but with blood. They ruled in times when survival demanded brutality, when hesitation meant death. Their crowns glittered, but their shadows loomed larger still. Were they monsters, or simply products of their age? Wu Zetian, Ranavalona, Mary, Catherine, Isabella, Cici, Boudica, Olga, Elizabeth, Cleopatra, all chose power over mercy. Some brought prosperity, others destruction. But all remind us of one truth: absolute power is never gentle. History often paints queens as figures of grace. Yet these women prove otherwise. They were warriors, schemers, tyrants, and visionaries. And as long as ambition burns in the hearts of rulers, the world will never be free of the ruthless.
So if you want to uncover the dark truth of history, hit subscribe now and join me before the past is buried again.